Hello and welcome to a new edition of Eco Africa. I'm Chris Alems, joining you from Ogun State, Nigeria. Today, we'll be looking at everything from great gardening ideas to critical issues like poaching. But first, let's say hello to Sandra. Hello, Sandra.
Hi, Chris. Greetings from Uganda. And nice to be with you again, all of your viewers that have joined us today. I am Sandra Twinobudio, based in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Well, our environmental show is brought to you by DW in Germany, Channels TV in Nigeria, and NTV right here in Uganda. Well, here is what we have for you today. The pupils building pyramid gardens to save on space and waste in Uganda. Turning to nature to making the construction industry more sustainable. And securing a better future for orphaned chimps in Guinea. We kick off with a big problem that affects many countries in Africa: poaching, the huge, illegal and dangerous threat in wildlife parks is typically very difficult to bring poachers to justice. Now, a center in South Africa has made it its mission to turn the tide on wildlife crime by fighting poaching with forensic science.
It's an all too common sight in South Africa's reserves. A rhino killed by poachers is open to find the object that killed him. It's often the first clue to catching the culprits, but it requires a lot of know-how and experts are in short supply. Greg Simpson is taking on the poachers butchering wildlife here. Since most of these crimes are never prosecuted, he founded an academy that helps train rangers and other first responders to wildlife crime scenes about the importance and intricacies of criminal forensics.
We realized that a lot of the people that first came across these scenarios were not necessarily trained in handling a crime scene, and particularly a wildlife crime scene. And there's certain skills that are really valuable, and forensics is one of those skills. So we felt there was a great need, and that training rangers and people that are first responders or even professionals that come across scenarios where an animal is poached or there's another illegal activity, and if they have some forensic skills, then it means that that investigation is more likely to end up in a prosecution at court.
At this facility, the Academy has simulated several different wildlife crime scenarios based on real-world examples, including a snared giraffe, a lion killed by community members, and a rhino poached for his horn. Students are trained in forensic techniques in order to preserve and collect vital evidence which can be used by authorities to move forward with legal cases.
In this environment, we can expose them to all these different scenarios so they can learn how to preserve and collect the forensic traces and document them correctly so that later down the line they end up with a successful prosecution in court. And that's what we've tried to create in this academy. Multiple scenarios, really drum in what they're meant to learn, and so when they go back into the real world, they're much better at tackling wildlife crime.
One of the main challenges when it comes to wildlife crimes is that they generally occur in remote places. South Africa's scrubland is vast and offers cover to poachers who ambush their prey.
Our issue with wildlife crime is often there aren't any witnesses. There's no one else around. Maybe someone heard a gunshot, but that's all you have. But if you actually can link someone to a crime through something like a footprint or a cell phone or a weapon or DNA even, that is really powerful in court.
Often it's rangers who first discover an animal that's been poached. They need to be trained on their initial response, as there's risk of evidence being contaminated or destroyed by wind or rain before the authorities can arrive on the scene. And that could make or break a case's chances in court.
I think it should be full hands on ground field rangers as well, because they're often the ones who do come across the scenes before we do. So yes, I do think it's something valuable for all rangers throughout South Africa. and throughout the African continent as well.
In addition to collecting evidence, students at the academy also take part in mock trials where they have to defend the evidence they've collected. The participants in this simulated court proceeding include former prosecutors, judges, or law enforcement officials. Collecting evidence is the only first step in a long legal process. In real-world cases, ensuring that evidence can hold up in court is vital.
Training which to first responders and those that need to understand their role will definitely have an impact in fighting wildlife crime, in the sense that it will then lead to credible evidence which the prosecution can use in proving the elements of the offense against the perpetrators.
Poaching is a billion-dollar business. In Asia, 1 kilo of rhino horn sells for tens of thousands of US dollars. The financial incentive is huge. Rhinos, elephants, rare reptiles, and succulent plants all pay the price for consumer fads. The loss of life has profound impacts on the environment.
These large megafauna like elephants and hippos, they have a really important role to play in an ecosystem. As plant eaters, as large animals, they have an important role in shaping the environment and the habitat around them. They have a role in seed dispersal, nutrient cycling, and by removing these animals, it can lead to biodiversity loss and changes and transformations of whole landscapes. In addition, it can also lead to unintended impacts, for example, increasing human-wildlife conflicts and having further impacts onto other whole entire food chains and ecosystems.
Last year, South Africa lost 448 rhinos to poaching incident. But there were also over 130 arrests and a number of convictions, including one where the poachers were sentenced to 60 years in prison. As wildlife crimes continue, training and dealing with them will become increasingly important to ensure that the country's biodiversity is protected.
We'll be returning to the subject of poaching a little later in the show, with a look at how some of the threat victims are being rehabilitated. So do stay tuned for that. Now it's time for a visit to a school right here in Uganda, where some innovative pupils are repurposing plastic to grow their own food.
Fresh from the garden of the sea, the spinach and the cabbage. We're going to the kitchen to prepare them for our lunch.
The young farmers of St. Kizito High School are successful. The produce from their school farm is used to feed their entire student population. The students at the school on the outskirts of Kampala already grow vegetables such as cabbages, raise chickens, and farm their own fish. Now they're collecting waste plastic bottles that they use to build vertical gardens in various forms and make the most of the remaining growing space.
In this, it helps us in a way that we plant a lot of different plants in it. We have the skuma witch in it, we have the tomatoes, the chili. You know, if you have a small environment at home, some of us have poor background, but through this it can help us in a way. It takes a little space.
One bottle building has a rooftop garden with mushroom cultures and waste cotton husks for soil inside. The harvested mushrooms are sliced and dried for storage.
This is simply an ecological way of using our space in the environment, whereby we're trying to avoid all the different forests cut down, all the different trees dying. We don't want this in the environment anymore, we are tired of it and have come up with a solution.
Through the projects, the students are learning innovative, eco-friendly and sustainable growing practices, how to be self-sufficient and how to guarantee a healthy diet.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
Let us now switch continents and talk about a problem that affects us in Africa too. West, in Germany, The construction industry is responsible for around 50% of all waste produced. Few buildings are constructed sustainably.
Some are looking at how to change that. The idea is to establish a circular model so all materials are reused or repurposed. But how does that work? Let us show you.
These German buildings don't only look modern, but they might also pave the way to a circular future. They're built according to the cradle-to-cradle concept. The idea is to replace our cradle-to-grave economy, where we take, make, and waste, with a circular one, where the products are designed in a way that its materials can be reused over and over again. Nora Sophie Griefan is the founder of the Cradle-to-Cradle Lab. It's an NGO dedicated to spreading circular regenerative design thinking across industries, politicians, and designers.
Welcome to the Cradle-to-Cradle Lab. You can come in here. We start here, you see like from the lamps that you can see, it's from a mushroom material, totally for biological cycles.
According to the concept Nora Sophie Griefan's father, Michael Braungart, and his colleague William McDonough created, everything we build must go to either what they call the biological cycle or the technical cycle. That means the materials used to build the products need to decompose, thus becoming nutrients for the soil, or dismantled to become what they call technical nutrients and reused in other products.
So we have a showroom here where you can see a lot of products that are already produced in a cradle-to-cradle manner. This flooring that you can see here, if I move, I can actually take it with me. Quite cool that you don't need to glue this. It is made out from recycling material. Gluing is in a cradle-to-cradle not the best idea to do because it's quite difficult to disassemble.
The lab uses these carpets that are totally made of recycled fibers.
And it's not glued, and you can bring it back to the company and they can recycle it and make a totally new carpet out of it.
Nora Sophie Griefan argues that there are a lot of natural alternatives to most of our commonly used toxic products.
This material, it's quite interesting because it's like a material that you can just take from the sea and use it, and you don't need actually to change it a lot.
So-called Neptune balls are basically dead seagrass that could be collected on shores and used as a high-quality insulation material. All these examples seem perfect and relatively easy to implement. But we need to change the way we have built our homes and products for the past decades.
50 years ago, we knew that there are negative environmental consequences if we have certain building habits. So in the beginning, we had felt that we require new knowledges to be able to build appropriately. But right now, we have a different problem.
Professor Anupama Kundu is an award-winning architect, mostly known for her sustainable projects like these ones.
When standardization is being imposed, then we must have the courage to question the limits of standardization.
And the construction sector is especially standardized and rigorously conservative. Some practices haven't changed in centuries. Take concrete, for example. It's the second most used material in the world, only after water. If it was a country, it would have been the world's third largest carbon polluter, after China and the US. Last year, we produced 4.4 billion metric tons of concrete. According to the UN's projections, at this rate, we would be producing enough concrete to build the entire city of Paris every week for the next 40 years. That is a lot of concrete. And for several reasons, this material is not widely recycled. A big one is standardized bad practices, says Marcel Ozer, a circular engineer focused on cradle-to-cradle applications in the construction sector.
If you use a gypsum plaster on a concrete wall, it's white, it looks good, so it fulfills the purpose. But I reduce the quality of the concrete by not being able to reuse it later.
So gypsum plaster makes the concrete unrecyclable, but a similar-looking silicate-based plaster doesn't affect the reusability of the concrete. Or let's look at steel. a universally used material in construction that could have an infinite life cycle. Just the simple decision to use bolted connections rather than welded joints would allow the structure to be dismantled, making it easier to reuse the materials. It's all about designing smarter. While these individual solutions are amazingly easy to implement, unfortunately, they alone will not be enough to make the construction sector environmentally friendly, says Nora Sophie Griffan.
So we need the market, we need the politicians, and we need the society to go for these ideas. And I think we are already in a stage where our society sees that we need to do something different. So Cradle to Cradle can show the solutions how this is actually possible.
Cradle to Cradle is not a miraculous idea, it's just a guide for us to think and build in cycles, just like nature does.
It's something people love to talk about, complain about, or be happy about: the weather. Now, a project in Kenya is linking the weather forecast with environmental protection. That sounds simple, and it is, because when people can expect rain, they can also prepare for it and improve life in their neighborhoods.
Using all the tools at their disposal, these volunteers are working to clear what they can from this rubbish-clogged stream. If water can't flow through here, floods can quickly inundate this part of Kibera, Kenya's biggest slum. Whenever there's rain approaching, an alert is sent out from a weather forecast app.
Weather Mtani has sent us a message warning us that it might rain and that we should be ready. We're not sure if it will actually rain, but we must be ready and inform our neighbors to take appropriate measures. We warn children not to play near rivers. We look out for faulty underground electrical wires and unclogged water drains so that if the rain comes, we will not be caught off guard. We also raise our belongings up off the floor in our homes.
When torrential rains fall, the consequences in Kibera can be devastating. The slum lies near the Ngong Hills on the westerly outskirts of Nairobi. There's no sewage system here, and the 200,000 residents can swiftly come under threat. So, 5 years ago, the Kenyan Weather Service and several international organizations launched a project to improve flood protection measures.
Most of them are being affected by flash floods from Ngong River, because when it gets heavy rains in Ngong area, then most of the waters run through the Ngong River that runs through the informal settlements. Most of them are being carried away, lost their lives due to the floods and even their properties.
The Weather Service now sends alerts via text message as well as email to ensure they also reach people who don't have a smartphone. And they also help people to understand the news.
We're able to train them on how to interpret. With this, we've seen that this information is very key to them because they need it for their day-to-day activities, planning of their day-to-day lives.
So far, 24 community leaders in Kibera have received training. They are all part of the group called Weather Mtani, or Village Weather. Since James Kirika completed the training, he's organized street gully cleanups with residents in his neighborhood, all of it on a voluntary basis.
After getting the messages from the Kenya Meteorological Department, we translate it into a simple message that people can easily understand. We do it with SMS or WhatsApp. Then after we send, it usually has it has advice. So the advice is the one which people use in terms of extreme heat and also flooding.
James Kirika was given an award for his commitment, further boosting the project's growing visibility. As financial support increases, the team can upgrade their range of tools. The Weather Mtani founders hope the initiative will be adopted all over Kibera.
Going to school every morning is a routine for many children, but for Marco and Caesar, it's fundamental to their survival. They are orphaned chimpanzees in Guinea. Poaching and the destruction of habitats have shrunk chimp populations. Thousands have been orphaned, and some species are even facing extinction. The Chimpanzee Conservation Center in Guinea is trying to help.
Marco and Caesar are leading the way into the bush. They are orphaned baby chimps rescued from animal traffickers. Now they live at the Chimpanzee Conservation Center, a sanctuary located in the National Park of Upper Niger in east-central Guinea. The country is home to more than 30,000 wild western chimpanzees, the largest population in the region. However, the numbers of these great apes, with whom we humans share more than 98% of our genetic blueprint, have declined dramatically in the last 20 years. They're now critically endangered.
The
main causes of chimpanzee extinction are the destruction of their habitat due to human activities and poaching. People kill them with no regard for the law that protects them. In Guinea, chimpanzees are often poached for their meat or sold as pets. Chimps like Marco, who've been seized by the authorities, are brought to the center. This sanctuary rehabilitates chimps and then releases them into the wild. Around 60 great apes are currently living at the center, which is funded by international organizations and private donors. The chimps' day gets off to a swinging start, with a breakfast of fruits and ginger tea to combat the cold. A routine health and psychological checkup follows, since they often arrive suffering from health problems and trauma. Then an excursion into the forest helps the young chimpanzees adapt to the wild. The forest is important for the chimpanzees. We walk with them through the forest so they can get used to it, as it is their habitat. Here they can find food and a place to sleep. But for Marco and his pals to return to the forest, they need large open spaces to hang out in. Yet human activities like agriculture and logging are destroying the national park. The loss of sufficient healthy habitat means just 20 chimps could be released since 2008. The Chimpanzee Conservation Center contributes to species protection through rehabilitation and reintroduction, but also by educating the local community. Because it's the community that's destroying the environment, so these people need to be educated and sensitized. That's very, very important for a project like this one. The center has launched different projects to raise environmental awareness within the communities living in the park. Among them is a weekly radio show. It informs listeners about the park's flora and fauna, its natural resources, and how to protect them. An educational program at primary schools inside the park also teaches future generations about the importance of conservation and the threats chimpanzees face. Since its start in 2019, more than 700 students have taken part in these workshops.
We run
these programs in schools to teach children while they are young, so they can grow up with the idea and also pass this information on to others to protect the environment. To safeguard the chimps' habitat, conservation and education are crucial, but so is providing alternative sources of income that promote sustainable development locally. Along with villagers and 2 women's associations, the center has created lasting employment opportunities and launched a plastic recycling project which supports more than 300 women. We make soap, and now we also recycle plastic bags and turn them into laptop sleeves or little purses. We also sew shopping bags for the women so they don't buy plastic bags at the market anymore. It's a win-win solution. These projects provide locals with a steady income, raise environmental awareness, and ease the pressure on the ecosystem. And could soon give Marco, Caesar, and their fellow chimps enough space to go ape in the wild.
I hope they have a great life out in the wild. For us, it's time to say goodbye. And I wish you all the best. Thanks for being with us again. I am Chris Elems.
And a farewell from me here in Uganda. Don't forget to send us your thoughts or comments on our social media platforms. And do remember to tune in next week for another episode of Eco Africa. I am Sandra Twinovideo, signing off from Kampala here in Uganda.